Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Andy Cabasso. Andy, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
It's good to meet virtually. We got to chat for a few minutes right before we hit the big red button. But Andy, if you or I were at a networking event, a business networking event, how would you introduce yourself to me?
How do I introduce myself to you? I haven't been to a networking event in years, Kevin. I don't know.
Think pre-COVID.
Yeah, right. Well, the last networking event I went to, what did I even say? Wow, I'm just like thinking back on that now. Like, what can I even remember of the before times? But what do I tell people that I do? So what do I tell my neighbors when we have new neighbors who move in? They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I do computer stuff, and I don't know how much you know of computer things. Anyway, so like what I typically tell people is, I run a startup called Postaga, which is a platform that helps people to do cold email outreach, whether it's for lead generation for salespeople or cold email for PR professionals to get press coverage for their clients or their businesses, or doing cold outreach for marketers and people doing link building to help improve their websites' search rankings and drive traffic.
So how long ago did Postaga start?
We started developing it in probably the summer of 2019. We officially launched in May of 2020. We launched on Product Hunt. We ended up being the #1 product for the day when we launched, the #2 product of the week. And then we kind of that was our big launch, and we've been growing from there. And then May of last year, we joined the Tiny Seed Startup Accelerator program. And yeah.
Is that with Neil Patel? Is that?
The Tiny Seed is with Rob Walling, Einar Volset.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Microconf is their other brand product. Yeah.
So if you could step back before, say, summer of 2019, what were you doing, for a living when you were kind of thinking, hey, we got to launch this?
So right before Postaga, I was working for a digital agency. Well, I was working for a company that I had sold my digital agency to. So years and years ago, I was actually a practicing lawyer. And before that, I was in law school. And when I was in law school, I was looking at different law firms that I'd apply to work at and realized they all had terrible websites. And I figured I could do something about this. And so I, with a friend, started a digital agency as a side project that was focused on web design and marketing for law firms. It ended up being very successful. It took off. I stopped practicing law. I was running this agency, and then it got acquired by a larger company in the legal space that was looking to get into marketing to offer that for their clients. And so after we sold the agency, I stayed on for a little bit. And after I left, I was looking for something new to do. And my co-founder from the agency with me, we kind of were brainstorming, and that's kind of how Postaga came about.
Now, this is a wild goose chase here, wild shot. But the company that acquired your initial kind of attorney-faced, marketing agency or digital agency, was that company based in New Mexico by any chance?
No, Minnesota, actually.
Okay, all right. Well, it's interesting because I had a previous guest on that started I think they digitized kind of law books and as a service to law firms, and they've grown really big. And I thought that they've reached out in some different areas. But Anyway, this show is about you and Postaga. So I'm curious. So you launch on Product Hunt. What was the I guess the avatar or the ideal client that you were looking for, when you first launched?
When we first launched, we were very much targeting marketing agencies and freelance marketers and in-house marketers, just anyone with a marketing focus, really, because we had seen this problem or challenge rather when we were running the agency ourselves, which is that for us and for our clients, we all want to increase our search rankings and get more traffic. And just creating content and doing on-page SEO only goes so far,
Right.
especially when you're in a competitive space like legal, for example. And what we were seeing was that there is a very, very strong correlation with the quantity and quality of backlinks that one has to their website. So links from other sites pointing to your website, the more of those that you have from reputable websites,
Right.
the better your website will rank
There
and
aren't
the
like
easier it will
Black
be.
Hat or whatever.
Yeah, I
they're-
mean, like there are certain websites where you could go to purchase a lot of backlinks for $5, let's say.
Mhm.
And if you would do that, that would probably do nothing for you because it's all like just bot generated and from bad, like poor quality websites, and like it's just not going to do anything for you because if it could, then everyone would be doing it, and then Google would shut that down real quick.
Yeah.
So what we were seeing was, well, how do we how do we get more websites to link to us? And the process that we were seeing being done was a lot of manual cold outreach. So spending time searching the internet, finding relevant sites that would be a good fit for pitching your blog content to ask them to link to yours, then having to manually try and find, well, who's the right contact person for these websites, and then figure out, well, who is, what's this? I figured out that this is the right person, but what is their email address?
Mhm.
And then after that, well, now I need a personalized pitch for them to ask them to link to my content or let me write a guest blog post for them or something like that. And just that whole process, what we were seeing is people were at agencies been using many different disconnected tools, and the process was just incredibly inefficient. And we wanted a way that we could do better link building outreach for ourselves and for our clients, kind of to be able to scale it, especially for agencies that have a lot of clients. And you want to offer this for your clients, if it's so labor intensive, it just doesn't make sense unless you're charging crazy amounts of money
Right.
that some clients can't afford. So kind of because of that, we built Postaga, and then over time, as we were in beta and sharing it with people, we were seeing that people were using it in many different ways that we weren't expecting. Like some people were using it for lead generation for sales, and some people were using it for more of a like PR purposes. And
Mhm.
since the workflow is pretty similar, the workflow being step one, we prospect to find the right sites to reach out to. Step two, we find their contact info. And step three, we email them. Since the workflow is generally the same within Postaga, we started catering to those other avatars as well.
Right. It's interesting. So I mean, you mentioned kind of the kind of backlinks and linking sites together and driving SEO, but that's not all that Postaga does, right? That it's also kind of a direct, email marketing service as well. Is that part of it, or what are some of the other components in the kind of the suite of services?
So there are a few pieces to it. So really, I guess the best way to say is like the workflow is like the first part of it is prospecting. So you want to find relevant websites, bloggers, podcasters, journalists to reach out to. And then after that, Postaga helps you find the right contact people at those websites and podcasts and blogs. And then it finds their email addresses and makes sure that they're working email addresses, which is very important. I know there are like some databases out there that like say like we have 1 million emails, and that's all great, but if they're not regularly checked and verified that they're working. If you email that email address or a bunch of them and then they bounce, that's going to make it much more likely that your emails go to spam, and none of us want that. So after we find email addresses, we have this basically email sequence builder. And so you can create personalized email sequences and use templates, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But like as very basic as like, dear, insert someone's first name. And I was checking out your company website, but you could also personalize it more for each contact if you want, to really make sure that your pitch stands out. And then it's not just one email, but it could send follow-up emails, like an entire sequence if people don't respond. And then if they do respond, great. We also have a CRM to manage the communications.
So I picture this kind of hockey stick up to, up into the right growth since, summer of 2020. But what's been the reality since you launched on Product Hunt to today?
So I guess one thing that was particularly interesting was, Product Hunt got us a ton of visibility. We had, I think, 1,000 people sign up from that first week. And a lot of them had never done cold outreach before. Like our product and our initial kind of messaging and pitch was very geared towards, I think, agencies and people with some experience in doing outreach. And so we had probably some early users in particular who were like, I love the idea of this. I definitely want to be doing this for my business or for my agency. And then, life happens and there are a million things that one wants to do. And we were like seeing with certain avatars, I'd say, like a higher rate of signing up, checking it out, and then not coming back. And we were like, all right, so is it our targeting that's off, or is there some misalignment here? And we did a bunch of interviews and we were finding people were saying to us, I like the idea of this and I want to be doing this, but even so, whatever time saving that this provides, I still don't have the time for it. Do you know anyone who could do this for us? And when we heard that, I was kind of like, well, I did used to run an agency and I know how to build processes and build a team. And so we ended up doing a pilot program of a done for you outreach service where we use our software basically to run cold outreach campaigns for some clients. And then it went very well. And having built the process, I built a team, and that in particular has been growing it's been growing very quickly. And it's kind of stemmed from that area where we were seeing, all right, well, some customers are canceling, but having this as an alternative option was appealing to them too. And so that's been a great resource as well.
Now, I picture that this is kind of a subscription model, but do you ever see that this kind of done for you service might be the tail that wags the dog, that might be the one that it's like you wake up one day and said, hey, we're making 15% revenue off of our subscription. We're making 85% off the done for you service, or something like that.
So it's funny because I know that there are plenty of people who have agencies and they talk about, well, one day I'm going to build a SaaS product and I'm going to develop the product, I'm going to build it, and then I'm going to offer it, and then everyone's going to sign up for it, and it's going to be great. I'm going to making money with these huge gross margins, and I'm not going to need a staff or anything like that, and it'll be wonderful. Yeah, exactly. And that's to a certain extent true, provided that you can find your audience, right? Like you have to make sure you have product market fit there and be able to get in front of those potential customers. But there are, aside from server costs, there's customer support costs and things like that. And while it may not be as much cost as the labor costs that are associated with having an agency, for us, having this agency component, it in some ways goes hand in hand with our software, just because I think we've found that there are agencies that they want to build their own in-house team. Perfect. great.
Right.
Or there are I think a lot of software companies where they have people in-house marketing departments, and they want to focus on PR, want to focus on link building, or sales teams. Sales teams in particular, I find like they're doing that all in-house.
Mm. Yep.
There are some startups that are doing like outsourced lead generation and things like that, but at a certain size in particular, they're bringing that all in-house. And so our software and our agency part kind of complement each other well. They kind of serve different markets or serve different personas,
Right.
and it's been working out for us.
Have you found that you are niching down, as the company grows a little bit, you're kind of more specializing in certain like verticals or certain industries, or is it still kind of, so early it's almost like a shotgun approach?
Well, so it definitely has been like that for a while, I'd say. We kind of pitched ourselves as first we were pitching as the outreach tool for link building. And then as we were kind of seeing people with different use cases, we broadened our scope, and we went from being more niche to being broader, and being like, all right, this does outreach for link building, PR, and sales. And now this is something that we're like evaluating now, being like, all right, well, who are our best customers? Where do we see the biggest growth opportunities for us? And so, right, like we're actually in this right now. And so it's early March 2022 when we're recording this. If you're listening to this 6 months from now or in early 2023, Postaga may look different and be serving a different audience compared to where we are at today.
Right. That's called, data-driven pivot there. You're certainly going to, based on the market that you have at the time. But I'm curious. So how many users are, is it, and I don't know exactly what the subscription model is. So, I mean, is 1,000 users good, or is 10,000 or 100,000? What is kind of what you need to really kind of feel like you're in real growth mode?
Yep. So we have a freemium model, and we have in terms of total users, we have 20,000. So that's that's a lot. There are like definitely differences that internally that we notice, like differences between certain users based on like their use cases and things like that. And kind of what we were talking about earlier, being very data driven, we're contemplating like different things in terms of our messaging and our niche and things like that. But having 20,000 users has given us a lot of data points and a lot of things to evaluate and consider.
So I'm assuming the freemium model like gives you a certain amount of outreach, so you can send out so many emails, that type of thing, before you kind of reach the paid level of service. Exactly.
Yes.
Like I'm thinking MailChimp here or something like that, and kind of in mind. But this is such an interesting story. I mean, it's actually still a very new company, but at 20,000 users is pretty amazing too. If you look back, and was there a period of time other than, you said you had kind of this influx from Product Hunt at the very beginning, but was there also a period of time that you look and you think, what happened that day, or what happened that month that, we just saw the user base just increase exponentially?
So while we do have like the freemium, we also did a free deal offer on the platform AppSumo, and that drove that was a big spike as well. Like those two events, I think in particular, the Product Hunt launch and then the AppSumo launch, were just very big spikes compared. If you like looked at our Google Analytics, it just like shot up like for the week of like Product Hunt, like the first day, and then it slowed down a little bit over the week, and then after the week it dropped off a bunch. But kind of AppSumo was similar in that like the first few days it picked up like crazy, and then at a certain point it like slowed down and leveled off. And those were like early days too. And so like over time, as we're doing more with our our own link building and our own content marketing and getting the word out. Growth from there. So.
I mean, it's interesting just to see how quickly it has grown, in a very short period of time. It'll be fun to kind of look 5 years down the road and say, wow, it's probably a different animal or different version or iteration, but you continue, hope the growth does continue. But it's, you kind of run an agency, and you've also run a SaaS company, and both of those together, you're kind of coming back and running an agency again too. But this is kind of my favorite part of our interviews, is this mentor moment, as I want you to speak to people that may be further behind you in the journey, that are just getting started leading teams and leading companies. And what are one or two things that you think are just very germane and very useful to people that, you kind of look back and think, boy, I wish I would have known this, from day one. It would have been kind of a game changer for me. Are there one or two things that just really stand out and that come to mind that you think would be helpful for other startup founders?
So for any startup founders, it may seem in some ways like it kind of can feel silly at the early stages if you're being very numbers focused, because you're like, my MRR is $100. I'm making $100 this month on one or two customers. Why am I being so focused on all these things, like all these metrics? But from the beginning, I would say have a serious foundation, like for all the numbers. Like if you can, like, implement an operating system like traction, for example, or scaling up, all the Rockefeller habits, things like that, because like that discipline will and that focus to see, like, here are our KPIs, here's what our metrics are month over month, and we can better see our path and see our trajectory and be very focused on these things. And so, like, having numbers each month that you're like, okay, these are our numbers, these are where we're at, this is where we want to get them to, helps you to be more disciplined, to know, like, these are the most important things, these tasks and projects that I'm working on, I shouldn't be focusing on any of these things that could be distractions. The first things I have to focus on are the things that are going to increase our MRR or going to decrease our churn, or increase our potential customers by way of organic traffic or paid ads or things like that. And so, I think at the beginning, for me in particular, I was like, it feels a little silly being like, all right, so here's our monthly recurring revenue and here's our website traffic, and they're both very low. And so what can I do to affect these? But nonetheless, having the metrics and like being very focused and dialed into knowing what they are, even when like one new sale like significantly increases it, it's very important for your like discipline for the future and everything like that. I'd say, beyond that, along with the operating system and the KPIs, like the operating system, the thing that's nice about it is it gives you a real framework for how to run and grow your business, to know,
right,
here are the different pieces of the business. Here are our specific goals for the quarter and for the year. And having these things, these, smart goals, these measurable goals that you want to achieve, can really keep you focused. And like, I'd say, like, for my experience doing operations and marketing, there can be a lot of shiny objects out there.
Yeah.
1 month you're like, okay, I'm going to do a lot of blog writing. And then another month, you know what? I see this other site, this competitor, they're doing their own podcast. Maybe I should have my own podcast. And like, there are so many shiny objects and distractions, but having the discipline to say, here are our 5 specific projects for the quarter that we're going to focus on. We're not going to focus on anything else except for these things. And at the end of the quarter, we'll reevaluate and see what are our projects and our rocks going to be for this next quarter that we're going to be focused on. That, I think, building that kind of discipline is very important for really any business.
those are two really great, and I know there's some kind of some sub points under those two, but those are two really great nuggets, golden nuggets for any startup founder, especially really early stage,
Mhm.
to implement. And I mean, I love the idea of having metrics in place to, and one of the things they do is to keep you focused, on stop chasing shiny objects, and stay laser focused on what you're trying to accomplish. But Andy, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd just like to wrap us up with today? And then after that, just tell people where the best place to find you online and find out more about Postaga.
What else? I guess one tip of advice, if you are ever considering doing cold email, one thing I would really, really recommend, people who get a lot of cold emails, people like journalists and bloggers with a lot of traffic, they get cold emails every single day. And businesses, more established businesses, get cold emails every single day with people pitching their products and services and things like that. And if you come at them with a pitch that they've seen 1,000 times before, they're not going to be impressed. Like, I'd say, think about it from the recipient's perspective. If you were this blogger who has a website that has 1 million visits a month, chances are they're getting a ton of people pitching them. They want to write a guest post, or they want a link. How would you react if you got the email that you are drafting right now? So I would really try and keep that in mind. And like, I'd say, like, if there is like one tip I have in terms of writing cold emails and sending them, that would probably be it. So really try and like stand out in that inbox, do something different, because when we're like checking our inboxes and we see someone who says, dear sir, I would love to offer you these services. We offer mobile app development at $20 per hour, and we can provide you this, this, and this. That's not all that exciting or interesting if you're on the receiving end of that. So, and like, that person who gets that email, like, they're on autopilot. They're like, oh, yep, that's another generic
Delete.
email. Delete.
Yep.
Going through hundreds of those potentially a day. And so what I would say is take a different approach, with the goal being, I want the person who opens this email to just pause for a second and stop in their tracks. And like, some tips and things like I found successful, I'm happy to share this. This has worked for me. I have a picture in my cold email template. It's a picture of me and my cat staring at the webcam. And when you open the email, you see a picture of some person you've never seen before and a cat, both staring curiously at the screen. And it makes people pause. They're like, what the heck is this? And I had one person actually call me on the phone. I forgot that I included my phone number in the bottom of my email signature for this, but I got a phone call, and this person was like, hey, Andrew. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, this is Mike. And I'm like, Mike? He's like, what do you mean you don't know who I am? You just sent me 5 pictures of your cat. And I was like, and so like that got a conversation going. It was a bit unconventional and unorthodox, but it got the conversation going. And so what you can do to stand out, something like that, or humor goes a long way, because you want to email someone like as if you're emailing someone you like recognizing that they don't know who you are, but at the same time, you don't want to be too formal, and you want your email to look human and stand out. And so that's probably my last tip or recommendation for anyone considering cold email. And where can you find me online? I'm pretty easy to find. My name's Andy Cabasso. Twitter @Andy Cabasso, LinkedIn Andrew Cabasso, Facebook we have a group called Grow Together SEO. It's all about link building and outreach. My website is postaga.com, postaga.com. And for everyone in the audience, if you want to check out Postaga for cold email, if you use the promo code podcast50, that'll get you 3 months at 50% off.
What a great offer for our listeners to use the code podcast50, and I guess the number's 50.
Yep.
Okay, all right, we'll make sure and I'll add that to the show link. And Andy, thank you again for just taking time just to kind of share the journey of Postaga and your personal journey. And really, I love the kind of the mentor moment there near the end where you really kind of drilled down and gave some very practical advice for startup founders, but really just overall, just really playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Andy, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kevin. This was fun.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.